Today, we're going to interview Jeff Silver, who's a very accomplished singer-songwriter. He's fabulous live. He writes some great stuff. He's going to play a song, an original, and then I'm going to ask him some questions. We'll break it down and help you understand the craft of songwriting.
It takes two, and we're only halfway there. I know that's the truth, no matter what you say. I need you to care for me the way I care for you. I can't keep on pretending that you feel it that way. I tried to lead you by the hand, tried to make you understand all that your heart should reveal, but you got to find it for yourself. Nobody else can ever tell you how true love feels. If I'd touched that hidden place inside your heart, there'd be no need for words. Love would be enough. No matter how we talk it out, there's no way to hide. There's just something missing from your touch. I tried to lead you by the hand, tried to make you understand all that your heart should reveal, but you got to find it for yourself. Nobody else can ever tell you how true love feels. I thought my love would show you the light, but I'm the one who needed to see as you're on your way to where you're meant to be. You're gonna go there without me. I tried to lead you by the hand, tried to make you understand all that your heart should reveal, but you got to find it for yourself, 'cause nobody else can ever tell you how true love feels.
All right, Jeff, thanks for playing. That was really awesome. I love that song. What does it feel like when you play it?
It's sort of like not that I have a specific character in mind, but there's just an emotional feel to it, even though the song isn't actually based on any real world experience or any person, any real person. It's a lot like, it's akin to Randy Newman, who talks about, this is not me, I write songs for this character. And this isn't a character, but it was a feeling that my co-writer and I, Vickie Hopper, kept in mind. I mean, that was the focus for the whole thing.
And how did it evolve as you two co-wrote the song?
Well, this one was unusual. We wrote 11 different versions of it, lyrically wrote 11 different versions. It started out being called How It Feels to Be Me, which was just, it was so pathetic and self-serving. And I think we wrote 3 versions of that, and then it evolved into How True Love Should Feel. Instead of getting away of this person to go, oh, I'm so miserable, I'm so sad, even though that's what comes across, I think. But so that it was a bit more outwardly focused, that became the issue. And so we went through 11 different versions, and we didn't actually settle on the actual title, which is how we went from How True Love Should Feel to How True Love Feels, making a declarative statement, until I think number 8 maybe of 11.
Wow.
But this is the one song I actually have every version we ever wrote. I don't usually keep track of them like that. And you can see the evolution of the whole thing, of how a line in the bridge actually ultimately became the first line of the first verse, or how there was a particular couple of lines where you get sort of internal hooks, lyrical hooks in a song, that we thought, oh, we cannot lose that. And eventually we did, after we used it to transition to something else, and it was the transition thing that then became the fulcrum, the important point in a verse.
So how did you know when it was right? I mean, how did you know it felt right in the song?
This was a while ago that we wrote it. I can't remember if this was just an internal decision that the two of us kept making, or I was spending a lot of time in Nashville. I think we were writing the song in Nashville. And there were a couple people that we would run songs by. And it may have been one of those guys who kept giving us feedback, to where we kept... there are versions where we just flipped the verses, where verse 2 became verse 1, verse 1 became verse 2. And then little, what seemed like inconsequential words, not in terms of the lyric, but that wouldn't make much difference in the feel, but by taking them out would suddenly reveal a new kind of phrasing. And
do you have an example of one of those words that you took out that changed the whole context?
I do.
Okay.
But in the second verse, which is, if I touch that hidden place inside your heart, used to be, if I touch that hidden place so deep inside your heart, which, looking back on it, it turns out you don't need it, because if it's in your heart, it's implied.
Right.
But it also just left room for the singer to sing, if I touch that hidden place inside your heart, and just find a more comfortable phrasing that has a flow to it and starts to feel just more compelling somehow.
Interesting.
Even when we had, when it used to be, no one else can ever tell you how true love feels, as opposed to how true love should feel. Because by putting in should, it's scolding.
Yeah.
And that's irritating. Nobody else can ever tell you how true love feels. Even to hear it in the midst of emotional music, nobody wants to be lectured to. On
their feelings, absolutely.
So it was things like that, and plus the fact that Vickie and I had written together a lot. And so there was some of it where you get to a point where some things don't have to be spoken, or that you trust when somebody brings up something you don't necessarily agree with. Or at one point we actually had we had legal pads, and as we were each working, this was before laptops and we were working on paper, and if one of us was working on something and the other suggested something we didn't quite agree with, we just already had it written on a piece of paper that basically just said, can I curse?
Yeah, sure.
Just F you. So you would just you just keep working, but just hold up the pad and keep going. But you do build up a kind of relationship in the best co-writing.
So there's that safety to bring things out without being confrontational in the process.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Now, the musical side of things, the chord progressions are awesome. I love the little licks you do. How did that evolve? How much was you? How much was your co-writer, Vickie?
If I remember correctly, we had that music. I had that music from the beginning. I tend to work more easily and naturally from music. We've done it all different ways. But I believe I had that music, because even the old, no one knows what it's like to be me, those lyrics fit that music. So I'm pretty sure we had that music right from the beginning.
Okay.
It was just that feel.
And how do you write chord progressions? Is that easy for you? How does that flow?
The difference between the reason we have 11 versions of the lyric and not of the music is, my theory is, that music has an internal logic that implicitly dictates where you're going. Some people are more open to that than others in terms of that if you make a mistake and it suggests a certain chord or a certain tonality you hadn't counted on, but all of a sudden opens a door to this new direction. And some people would say, oh, that was terrible. Yeah. But I'll often hear that and think, wait a second, and go in that direction. So, and that's not a judgment either way. It's just what your ear is attuned to. So, and there's plenty of songs that don't do that, and they're fantastic. But to my mind, there is that sort of logic, so that once that's established, that to me serves as foundation to help guide the lyric. It helps guide the feel, the momentum, the flow. And I think that's what happened with that particular song. Those chords just flow. They, even with no lyrics or melody, it suggests a certain tone, not melodic musical tonality, but a certain tone and emotional environment, and so you work, at least for me, you work within that space. And then you can work with the lyrics, and lyrics to me can be, music can be picked apart, right? But there's something about lyrics, because there's so many different interpretations, and specific interpretations, literal interpretations with lyrics that don't apply to music, because music is more suggestive in sort of an ethereal way.
So what I'm hearing you say is you kind of had the musical part written out in full, and you're just waiting for the right lyrics to fit on that vibe, or that would receive those lyrics. Is that more or less how the flow works for you?
That's as close enough a way of saying it as I can think of right now. But then, for instance, one of the phrases that I think was in there that I mentioned before about that we thought was one of those lyrics that we just can't lose this. I think it was at the end of the second verse. Nothing more, nothing less, but nothing changed. And that's all well and good, and it works in sort of a Bob Dylan-y sort of way. But what we ended up with was, but I can't keep on pretending that you feel it that way. Which is much more personal and intimate. The other one is just sort of...
It's an interesting wordplay.
It's a cool phrase for the cool phrase sake.
Yeah.
And the other one turned it into something personal and intimate, and emotional, that a singer could sink their teeth into. I can't keep on pretending that you feel it that way.
And when you write a song, do you care what people think about it, or is it you're just making a statement and you're okay kind of confidently on your own? How do you think about that aspect of songwriting?
I think it varies. I think most times, even if I'm trying to say something that it might be a little, take your pick of any of these, esoteric, personal to the degree that I don't care what everybody else thinks, or just whimsical or a little obtuse somehow. I think you owe it to a listener to give them at least a little hint, or crack the door a little bit. Not just so they can understand what the hell you're trying to say, but also to give them an opportunity to tap into what I want, what I'm feeling, what I would like them to feel, if I can give them that opportunity. So it's not often that I would write something, and if people said, I don't get it, that where I would say, I don't care. Usually I'll try to figure out something. I do have one or two that are a little, not spiritual, but they're open to interpretation, where they are intentionally more vague, and but I think and in those cases, whatever you would feel or think when you heard it, that would be fine, because it was written. There was one in particular that it was sort of a stream of consciousness bit of lyric writing. I still to this day don't know exactly what it means. It has suited a number of different occasions, like for a memorial service for a friend. But in other circumstances, I could play it, and it might mean something completely different to someone else, and that's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. Some it's very specific, and others I intentionally want to make it vague. I mean, I think of like Stone Temple Pilots songs. Some of the lyrics that he wrote, I still don't understand what they meant, but I love them.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily matter to me as a listener, whereas other people might say, well, what's the logic here? And so it's always interesting to know how much you really want people to receive it versus you're just okay with it being interpreted however it is.
Right. And keep in mind, that's a what we're talking about is a very singer-songwritery perspective one way or the other.
Absolutely.
If it's pop writing or any other, whatever more commercial, popular genres are in play at the moment that anybody happens to be watching this.
Yeah.
It has much more to do with the groove, and the groove itself, like that musical accompaniment suggests something. You're in that groove, you're in the feel.
Yeah.
And that's really all that's important. I mean, look at Uptown Funk.
Oh, love it.
I have no idea what most of that. I mean, I get the gist of what it means, but exactly.
Yeah.
It's the feel of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could listen to that over. Well, we all pretty much have listened to that over and over and over, regardless of where we've gone. And that's a couple of years old now at the time we're talking. But it still is one of those. It just grabs you.
Absolutely.
But it's a different style, a different approach.
So, Jeff, how do you think about just the craft of songwriting in general?
Can you be a little more specific? It's a noble profession.
It is a noble profession.
Next.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy most about writing songs?
A good friend of, older friend of Vickie's, and who I got to know through Vickie, Carol Hash, used to say, my favorite thing is having written. As opposed to writing. Writing can be, it can be exhilarating, but can also be really, when you're writing 11 versions of the same song, it can get a little tedious. There is something about, I would say the two things is when you feel like you have stumbled onto just the right line. Or it says something even that you didn't anticipate. And then when it's done, feeling like you really accomplished something, you have something tangible where there used to be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting applause when you play it. But
it is.
That's not songwriting. That's something completely different.
Yeah. But what is it like to perform? What do you enjoy about performing in front of a live audience?
There's a certain, for me, there's a certain degree of control, honestly, that I don't have that much in the rest of my life. And many people don't.
Yeah.
But and I say that just in terms of what songs I pick, how I choose to play them, and I mean a lot of it's improvised, but sometimes there are little bits planned in between songs, and so it does become a little. I mean, it's all very intimate and spontaneous, sort of like this. Yeah. But there is a bit of control. I can hope if I've done it right. If I've done the writing right, I have some control over what this group of people right now is feeling. And when they laugh, or I'm hoping they laugh, or they applaud, where I hope they'd applaud, that's also very nice.
Yeah. Do you still get nervous when you perform at all?
Yes. The few hours immediately before, I realize I can't remember any of the lyrics to anything that I've written. So I've come to recognize that that's going to happen and try to embrace it. Go to the bathroom a lot.
I do too.
And then I don't do this as much anymore because, again, I'm starting to trust that can we call that a process?
Yeah.
Where I used to write out, have the set list, where the capo's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the first line of the song, and once I had that,
the rest just flows.
Triggered the rest. Yeah. Now I'm a little better about that. I don't need the words there so much.
So, is there anything else in your preparatory process before you perform now that is important as a songwriter, especially when you're performing your own stuff?
Not so much. More just to try to stay as relaxed as is possible.
Yeah.
I do a lot of writers' rounds, where there's several of us. Those are, you don't get as much mic time when you're sharing it with 3 other people, but it's so much fun.
Yeah.
When you're up there by yourself as a solo, you really are up there on your own.
Absolutely.
And so the last time I did it was right after I had done a couple of the group shows. And boy, with those spots in between as you're finishing one song, changing the capo, trying to keep the patter going.
Yeah.
And it's, God. And so you're yakking it up with the audience.
While you're doing this technical thing and hoping it flows.
Well, hopefully you're taking care of most of that ahead of time. But yes, it all becomes technical once you're up there.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm thinking, oh boy, if the other guys were up here, I'm sure there's something hilarious one of them would say. I miss having them here.
Your wingman up on the stage.
It is. And those shows, I have to say, have turned out to be, it's not fun because you've got your friends up there. I think it's this whole other thing that the audience doesn't normally see.
Absolutely.
It becomes half panel show and half celebrity roast, depending on who has the mic at any given moment. So those are a ton of fun.
So a writer's round is where you've got multiple artists on the stage. So can you talk more about just how that evolves, how you pick other singer-songwriters and what that experience is like in more detail?
Ideally, it's people you're friends with. We have a group that has played locally around here in Atlanta, which just evolved out of, we don't play poker, but we get together to hang out maybe once a month, and share songs with each other and drink a bit, and sometimes it's more drinking, sometimes it's more songs.
Right.
But so we've done a bunch together, and sometimes you just get a call, that there's another group that's already set up and somebody can't make it and they've got a chair to fill. So. Cool. But it is a community, and everybody wants, and there's an implicit understanding. It is a show. Yeah. And so, you want to support everybody else, whether that's jumping in to sing a harmony that maybe hadn't been planned, or, slipping in a dig that gets a laugh when they're talking about something in between. So, But they are little, sort of like house concerts, which are much more intimate. These are in a slightly bigger venue, still a little more intimate than just what people might think of as a big song show. Yeah.
Well, for the new songwriters out there that are watching this, do you have any tips for them?
Well, clearly, don't be afraid of rewriting things. That is a very difficult thing to do, because when you get something done, people say, oh, it's my baby. But it's hard not to get, at least initially, very attached to what you've come up with. Rarely is what comes out the first time the best attack at something. Yeah. Find people outside of close family and friends to give you feedback that you can trust. Partly because family and friends may love everything you do, and let's be honest, certain family will hate everything you do. So really, find some more objective listeners. Also, in the vein of what I mentioned at one point, whether it's made it in this edit or not, the idea of following mistakes sometimes. There's always there's a natural tendency to want to follow what's popular, what's commercial, and you want to make things accessible, and that's fine, but don't let that rule out the possibility that you find something that makes your voice unique. Whatever, and everyone has some thing that's unique about it. I don't mean necessarily singing voice, but
style. Yeah.
Stylistically, a lyric idea that may seem a little outside, what's typical. Even that, How True Love Feels, has, in hindsight, I realize now, the phrases end in odd places. The phrases are extended beyond often. Yeah. The title of it, no one can tell you how true love feels, goes beyond where the chord progression might naturally suggest it should end. that may rub some people the wrong way, but it also makes it something that's unique.
Yeah.
And if there's if there's 500 other people who can write something, you being 501 is not probably going to help get any attention. But if you find what's your unique voice, and anything that feels authentic is always more potent somehow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, those are hard things, but as you evolve, as you write, you find what those things are for you. At one point, I remember too, where I felt totally dependent on going into various workshops to take in a song and say, is it okay?
Yeah.
And one day, I don't remember the specific day, but I remember the feeling of suddenly, as I was working on something, I knew whether it was successful in getting across to people, but I knew immediately, I had a visceral sense, oh, this is what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I knew why, and I knew what the intended effect was to be, and why it was that way to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just a process of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And doing and doing and
over
doing.
and over. Prototyping, iterating through until you get to that space. And then once it's right, once you have that feeling, then you know, and even when you get feedback that you don't like, that's fine, because it is what it's supposed to be.
And it's a balance between that and what I mentioned earlier about not being too attached to something, or not being so attached that you can't let it evolve or change it if you're getting consistent feedback. Well, we're not understanding that part, or that part isn't working so great. So it is that balance, and discovering who are the people whose opinions you trust. You don't have to listen to everybody, but you should have someone in the group sense that you can count on.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yep.
All right, so for people that want to stay in touch with you, how do they connect with your music online or other ways?
I have a number of things posted on Reverb Nation, just under Jeff Silver. If you've got questions or would like one-on-one songwriting lessons, which I'm starting to offer, you can just email me at jeffsilver9, the number 9, at gmail.com. And at some other date, we'll have a website up and running.
That's right. So Jeff is a really talented musician. I've seen him perform live. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with him here and just talking shop, because I write music myself, but Jeff has a lot more experience in Nashville and helping run the local NSAI events, the Nashville Songwriters Association International, which is a cool group. There's chapters all around. That's a great way to plug into your local community. And you won't meet anyone like Jeff because he's exceptional, but you'll meet some other folks who are pretty good in the songwriting space.
And you can find Nashville Songwriters Association International online, and if you're interested, there are some pull-down menus to see if there's a local chapter where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. So just get out there and create with other folks, but check out Jeff. He's offering lessons, so if you want to have a one-on-one relationship with him, then do it. And you'll learn, and it's really cool to start interacting with songwriters like Jeff that really know what they're doing.
That's a songwriting relationship, by the way.
Oh, that's right, of course.
Sounded a little...
a little more personal.
It's not that kind of website.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's just songwriting, straight down the middle. So,
and those can be via Skype or in person if you happen to live in the Atlanta area.
Absolutely. So, all right, well, thank you very much for listening. Jeff, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure.
You're welcome. It was fun to do.
Together.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, and for everyone else out there, rock on. We're here in studio interviewing Jeff Silver, who's going to share an original song. Yeah, I take a lot.
No one has said these words before in this order ever.
Oh God! All right. What's behind when you do other, not lyrics but sounds in a song?
Are we talking about both songs now?
Yeah, we are. I just merged to another song, so we're going to cut that out. Okay.
Oh my God, what's happening?
Okay, no, we'll come back.